Hey fellow designers, it's Karen of Karen Gwen Customs. I just wanted to check in and let you guys know that my circle skirt templates are back in stock and they're back new and improved. This time, instead of being a laminated cardstock, these are made on a heavy duty yet flexible plastic material. These are great for any type of circle skirt, whether it's a wedding gown train, a prom gown train, or just a skirt that you wear out on a normal day. They also come on this convenient little key ring that you can open or close to remove templates as needed. These are available on my Etsy store, etsy.com/shop/Karen Gwen Customs. So head on over and purchase your set if you haven't already. Hey fellow designers, it's Karen of Karen Gwen Customs. The clip you just saw is an overview of my new and improved circle skirt templates, and in this video I'm going to be showing you guys exactly how to use them. So if you have been curious about them and thinking about purchasing, this is the video for you. So stay tuned, but before you do, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, click the notification bell so you get notified every time I upload, and be sure to share this video with a friend who may be interested in my content. Let's get started. So I'm going to make a circle skirt for myself, and I'm going to use the template that's marked for 31 inches because that's about how big my waist is. So the circle skirt template itself is 4 1/4 inches. I'm just using my table to measure it. It's 4 1/4 inches on each side. So that is the length that you're going to need on your fabric just for the circle skirt template. And then I know that I want my skirt to be 15 inches long. We'll just say 15.5 because I plan on hemming the bottom. So you're going to add the length you want your skirt to be plus the length of your circle skirt template, and that's going to give us 19.75 inches of fabric needed on each side. So for a circle skirt, you start off with a square, okay? And you have a center hole, which is what the circle skirt template is going to help us cut out. And then you also are going to be cutting around. You're going to be cutting these edges off so that you have a big circle. So my template is going to help you cut out the center hole, and then you're going to use your measuring tape to cut out the outer circle. Now, when you get ready to cut out the circle, as you can see, this is not a full circle, it's a quarter circle. So what you're going to be doing is folding your square of fabric. You're going to have a square of fabric, and you're going to fold it twice so that you end up with 4 layers of fabric. And then when you get ready to cut out your template, let's just pretend this is our fabric. This is the 24-inch template, it's the smallest one I have. When you get ready to cut it out, as long as you folded your fabric into 4s and are not using more than one piece, as long as you're using one big piece, you're just going to cut the fabric out right at the edge of the template. Your seam allowance is already accounted for. And when you open it up, you're gonna have a full circle. If you are cutting out your template on one big piece of fabric, just like the one that we did, and you have one big piece of fabric that you're folding into 4s, then you're going to have your template right at the edge of your fold, just like so. Remember, seam allowance on this side is already accounted for, and you don't have any seam allowance on this side because you're cutting right at the corner. Now, if you have 2 pieces of fabric, say the length of fabric required, maybe you're doing a train or a skirt for a larger waist and you don't have as big a piece of fabric, you might need to put 2 pieces of fabric together to get your full circle. And instead of having that one big piece folded into 4, you're going to have 2 separate pieces of fabric folded over on each other. That's your 2 layers. And then fold it in half. So here's your folded edge, and then here's your raw edge. If you have two pieces of fabric that are coming together to make one, you are going to need to leave a 1/2 inch seam allowance on the side that has the cut edge. So on the fold, you don't need to leave a seam allowance, but if you are not cutting the edge of your circle skirt template on a fold, you need to leave a seam allowance. And I'm going to demonstrate why. So let's pretend this is our fabric, and I'm cutting this out. Now, you have two pieces, or actually let me use this. So when I cut this out, I got my full circle, right? And you can see that there is a little bit of quote-unquote fabric that's extra, that's not really part of the circle. That is because this is your seam allowance. Because you have to sew this together to get your full circle. And then that makes it more of a true circle. So once you sew it together, you're gonna have your true circle. That's why if you have two pieces of fabric that you're gonna have to sew together, when you cut your circle skirt template out, you're going to need to leave extra room over here on this side. If that doesn't make sense, leave it in the comments, but I hope that made sense. The circle measurements of these two numbers, 32 inches and 33 inches, are so close that they actually fit onto the same template. So for the 32 inch, you're going to do the 1/2 inch seam allowance like I just showed you on the other template. For the 33 inch, you want your seam allowance to be a slight bit bigger, maybe 3/4 of an inch, and that's going to get you to the 33 inch mark. And that's how you should do with any of the templates that have two numbers. For the smaller number, you'll do the 1/2 inch, and for the larger number, you'll do a smidget larger of a seam allowance. Now, for my actual skirt, we've decided that the skirt needs to be, or the fabric needs to be 19 3/4 of an inch on each side. So really you're going to be doubling that for the width and length of your fabric. So the fabric should be, excuse me while I calculate, your fabric is going to need to be 39.5 inches on each side. So I'm just going to measure out 19.75, fold it over, and then I'm going to, on my folded edge, I'm going to measure out 19.75 inches again. Okay, so it may have been a little difficult to see me folding, but I'm just going to measure and make sure. This side is 19.75 inches, this side of the fold is 19.75 inches, and now I'm just going to go ahead and cut this out so that I have a big square. Okay, so there's my big square, and I have 4 layers. This is the corner where I'm going to be cutting out my circle skirt template. I'm going to take my 31-inch template and just lay it down in the corner. Now, as I mentioned before, seam allowance has already been accounted for these templates. So really, once you have your actual circle, you're going to have a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and your actual circle is going to be this big. So the template is actually about a 1/2 inch smaller than what it needs to be, because it's allowing for you to have a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So all you have to do is lay your template right at the edge of your fabric and cut right at the edge of the template. And probably make sure you have some decent scissors, because mine are trash. Okay, so I have cut out the little space for my template, and now, knowing that I want my skirt to be I want my actual skirt to be 15.5 inches long, I'm just going to take my measuring tape like this, and I'm going to mark with pins all around in a circular pattern 15.5 inches down from the edge of where I cut my circle, or my circle hole, my quarter circle. Okay, and that's right about 15.5 inches. So I have marked with pins 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have about 6 pins where I marked where the edge of my skirt will be. And remember, I did that just by moving my measuring tape around from the edge of where I cut out my quarter circle all the way down to the edge of how long I want it to be. So once you've done that, you're just going to take your scissors and try to neatly follow where your pins are. Excuse my scissors. Jeez. Okay. Edge might be a little raggedy, but I will fix that when I actually hem my fabric. I picked the worst scissors to use, but that's okay. Now, I'm going to unfold this, and I'm going to show you guys that the hole we cut out is the right size based on the template we used. So, here is the skirt. You can see it's a full circle. And then here is the hole. And you can see the template is about a quarter as big as the size of the entire hole. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my measuring tape and remember the template included seam allowance. So the seam allowance is actually this little 1/2 inch of a section around the hole. So I'm gonna measure this, but I'm gonna measure it about a 1/2 an inch from the actual hole to show you guys that once you cut this out, you do end up with 31 inches. So I'm just going to take my measuring tape and pin it all the way around, leaving about a 1/2 an inch of space. because that's how much space I'm going to leave when I sew my skirt. I'm going to be adding a waistband to this because this is stretch fabric, so I want my waistband to be smaller than my actual waist so it will fit snugly. Okay, just going to zoom in a little bit, or actually I'm just going to pick up my camera. I don't know if you guys can see, but I pinned the measuring tape all the way around, leaving about a 1/2 inch seam allowance because that's how much space I'm going to be leaving when I sew. And then as you can see, the 31-inch mark is where the measuring tape meets itself at from 0 to 31. It meets right there, and we used the 31-inch template, so that is proof that using this template and cutting it out as instructed is going to give you the exact size of the template. Okay, so in the next segment I'm just going to be hemming my skirt, and I'm going to add a waistband, and then I'll have a skirt. So since I have a circle skirt and it doesn't have any seams, I'm just going to cut out one long waistband for my skirt instead of having to sew like multiple pieces together. And instead of cutting my skirt out, my waistband out to be 31 inches long, because that's how wide my waist is, I'm going to cut it smaller, and I'm going to take off like 5 inches because this fabric is really stretchy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to cut it at 26 inches. Why am I using these? And this waistband is going to be folded over, and I want it to be like 1.5 inches tall. So I'm going to multiply that by 2. So the waistband will be 3 inches tall, and then I'm going to add another inch for seam allowance. So that means I'm cutting out a 4-inch tall waistband that is 26 inches wide. Very simple, guys. So I'm going to sew this together by, I'm going to first sew the short edge together. Then I'm going to fold it over and sew it to my actual skirt. Okay, so I'm going to first take the short edge of my waistband and sew it together using a zigzag stitch, 1/2 inch seam allowance. I'm just going to trim the excess off. Now, here's my circle skirt, and I'm just going to take my waistband like this and fold it down all the way around so that I have 2 layers. And I'm going to take the non-folded edge of my waistband where the 2 layers meet and just begin pinning it around the outside edge of my circle skirt. So here's the circle skirt, and my waistband is going to be pinned around it like so. Now remember, the waistband is not as wide as the actual circle skirt hole. So what I like to do is take one edge or one part of the waistband and pin it, and then I fold the waistband or pull the waistband like this so I can find the other side where it would be cut in half, and then I pin it to the other side of the circle skirt hole. And then that way, that gives me a better idea of how I need to stretch the skirt out, or stretch the waistband out to pin it to the skirt hole as I go. But do remember that as you're sewing the waistband, you need to be stretching it. I actually think the way I cut this was wrong, and I don't think I checked to see which direction was more stretchy before cutting it, so it might be a little bit of a tight squeeze, but we'll see. I've come this far and I'm not starting over. And then I do the same thing with the, I try to pin it in 4 places. So there's the middle of that segment. Okay, so I have it pinned in 4 places, and I'm just going to start sewing and stretching the waistband out as I go. Okay, so I have completed the circle. It was a little hard making sure it was stretched out. So there you have it. That is how you use my circle skirt templates to create a circle skirt. You can use this not only to create just a skirt, you can also use it for the train of a gown. You can also, like, if I didn't put on a waistband, I could have just left that. I could have just cut out the circle skirt and then sewn a top to go with it, and I could have made it into a dress. The possibilities are just endless. So make sure you go to my website, etsy.com/shop/KarenGwenCustoms to purchase your set. They do sell out really quickly when I post them. So if you go and try to buy a set and they're not there, just come back and check in a day or two. Thank you guys for watching.